So something I've been drawn to lately. I want your thoughts on this, but I'm interested in seeing like the truth in all religions. So I understand the coherence of the Christian tradition, but I've been drawn a lot to the Islamic Tawheed as well, and their coherence of things as well. And one thing that stood out to me was that I think they understand that, you know, for the Trinity to exist is for God to have a relationship with us, right? Through Jesus, right? Because if God becomes man, right, that's a special kind of relationship with man by taking on flesh. Like that's John 1:1. Like the word became flesh and dwelt among us. Like I understand there's a lot of power in that idea. But something that the Muslims keep in mind as well is that you can't have a relationship without distinction, right? And so if God is distinct from us, there's relationship in there as well. There's communion in there as well, right? So in their worldview, they don't need for there to be a direct incarnation of God in flesh in order for God to have communion with us, right? And I just want your thoughts on that.
Uh, that doesn't tell me anything about relation at all. Um, so the main thing that's wrong with Islam is that if you're talking about from this perspective, if we're supposed to get like God is supposed to be like the ultimate thing, right? And he's supposed to have everything in the oh my goodness. Why is everything just clicking? All right. And we're supposed to have everything to the highest degree, right?
As in God gives what he promises to us. Yeah, yeah. I mean, sure, yeah. That's why God is good. Yeah.
No, like so God's supposed to be the source of everything and he's supposed to have everything at the highest degree, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah, he is ontologically the highest thing that there
Yeah.
is. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
One of those things that he gives us is quote unquote one of those things he tells us to do is like be fair, right? So he's
Yeah.
supposed to have fairness in the highest degree. He's supposed to have love in the highest degree, right? What is the
Um,
definition of fair?
the definition of fair. Fairness is equivalent with justice, which is each getting their due. That's how the ancient Greeks,
Okay.
Aristotle described it.
Now, if God is one person,
Yeah,
how in the world is he the embodiment of fairness to the highest degree before he creates?
because all things are made whole through the principle of oneness. So God must be the maximal expression of that
How
whole.
is he fair? You just gave me a definition as treating somebody else like they're supposed to be
Oh yeah,
treated.
yeah. And that I think that promotes the definition that I gave.
How?
Fairness is what. So if
If
fairness,
Allah is one person, who was he fair to before he created?
I think all things are in a way, consubstantial with Allah in the Tawheed.
So Allah is literally
Because
dependent on creation in order to be
so,
fair.
so there's a great philosopher named Mullah Sadra in the Islamic tradition, and he talks about how Tawheed is not just a property of God; it's also an activity of God.
Yeah,
So
so
Tawheed,
he
yeah,
depends on us in order to be fair, correct?
not at all. No, there's no argument that
So
I've
how
seen
would he
in
be fair?
Islam that says there's no argument I've seen in Islam. Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. A big Christian tradition is that prior to creation, God has to have these attributes without being dependent on his creation, which is the Trinity. I understand. Um, there's nothing in Islamic theology that I think gets in the way of that, though. How?
That's just a logical contradiction. How is he the ultimate source of fairness and he can't even be fair before creation? So
But
he depends on something that he needs to create in order to be fully
not at all.
himself.
But nothing that you're saying is tied into anything else you've said. Why are you saying that Allah is unfair in this worldview? How does that connect?
Fairness means treating someone else like they're supposed to be treated, right?
Yes.
Allah is eternally who he is. He doesn't change, correct?
Yeah.
He doesn't need anybody else for anything, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Before creation, who was he fair
Oh,
to?
oh, oh, we have to talk about the definition of who. That's what's going on here. The who-ness of Allah would have to be fundamentally different from the who-ness of, say,
Okay,
particular.
so what was
Right?
he
So,
fair to?
so, so I need to be fair to you, and you need to be fair to me. But to say that God has to be fair to someone is to presuppose that God has a deficiency in who he is, such that he has to be dependent in the
It's
first
just a
place.
logical contradiction. So he doesn't need to be fair.
No, he is fair, right?
How is he
Being
fair?
fair. So Allah being fair to himself is not the same way as you being fair to yourself. It's not the same thing. Why would it be the same thing if you're two ontologically distinct beings?
So what does fairness mean to him?
Wait, but that question is very important. How is you being fair to yourself the same exact thing as God being fair to himself? How
We don't say it's the same exact thing. We say it's analogous. So when we say
no,
something, hold on, but when we say something's analogous, we mean that it's like we have it, but at a higher degree, i.e., that he's infinitely fair in the most perfect way to the Son. The Father's infinitely fair to the Son, who is infinitely deserving of that fairness. So it's
right.
at a higher degree. If you say that Allah is fair, in what way is he fair? There's
But
nobody else to be fair to. There's nobody else to share love with. There's no way to even know if he's loving.
no, but a one or a who requires a particular essence. So the Trinity doesn't solve this problem either because it says one essence, three hypostases. So
That's
you're not
three distinct persons. That's different
so
persons.
based on what? There's no essence to create distinction. So what is that predicated on? The
So
idea.
if you look at what Aristotle says, one of the ways that there could be distinction is in what's called a relation. We have something called relationship of opposition or relative opposition in the Trinity, which provides for a real distinction without destroying or dividing the substance of a thing, because that's what relation does. It doesn't divide the substance of a thing. And real quick, blind guy thrice. Yo, Nick tried to get me to set up this dono thing and it's not working like it's supposed to be working. Your thing was supposed to pop up, pause. But appreciate you for that $5. Appreciate you. All right. What was you saying?
Right. I think the issue here is that that doesn't tell me why the relationally distinct thing is a who. It just says that it's somehow distinct and therefore we should call it another who, even though it has the same essence. That's like me trying to show you that my right hand is a separate person, but just trust me, bro, because it's relationally distinct. But that doesn't prove to you that it has its own sentience or personhood. So that's the problem we run into in the Trinity is that we have three
So
relationally distinct types of beings, but what makes a being is an essence. So if they share the same essence, they're the same being anyways. It's just
they're the same being, but they're not
yeah.
the same person. So a person is an individual substance of a rational nature.
Okay, this is important. So what's your difference here between substance and essence? Because it sounds like you are using those differently.
Substance and nature.
Substance and essence.
So
Right.
so
Because you would say that the three persons share the same substance, but maybe they're share the same essence, but maybe the three substances are not the same. Is that what you're saying? Or?
so their modes of existing aren't the same. They have different modes of existence.
Yeah. But what does that mean? Like, tell me how that makes three distinct persons, right?
You talking about the Trinity?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we talk about the Trinity, there's two different acts that you can have in a mental agent or something that's like a mind, right? You're going to have the act of willing and you're going to have the act of the intellect. Now, one, we don't try and prove the Trinity from reason, first of all.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So, one, we get the Trinity from revelation that tells us, and we can prove that the revelation is true, right? So, what we do is to explain how this can be the case. And what we also do is show how this aligns with what we see in reality. So, I'm not trying to say that I'm like proving that these are three distinct persons. I'm just telling you to
Of course
believe.
not. Of course, you're saying that there might be good reason to believe that, and that is sufficient. Sure, yeah. I mean, Thomas Aquinas made the same argument. Yeah, and that's fine. I think that from the Muslim perspective, I think they're just trying to say that the simpler explanation is the one that's more correct. So I think that the criticism
That doesn't even follow though. Like it does just because something's simpler doesn't mean it's
I want
correct.
to explain. But
Like
I
it
want to
can't
explain.
account for. That's why I'm asking. How in the world does it even account for ethics?
Well, just 1 second. I think this is an important like framework, right? Because your presupposition is that a being with pure oneness has a deficiency if it only has fairness to itself before creation and to no other beings, right? But that presupposition is false because clearly the type of virtues that God is able to act upon before creation are not deficient, right?
You're just saying it's false because it's false. It's not deficient because it's not deficient.
But I'm saying that because God must have some kind of way of being that's different from our way of being. So we can't ascribe our standards onto God. I think that's a fallacy.
It's not a standard. It's just a logical question. If
But
we're
like,
supposed to reflect God in some way, how in the world are we reflecting him by treating others how they're supposed to be treated? There's nothing about that. There's no reason for us to do that.
if God is the primary essence of oneness and the principle of oneness, and there's a oneness to treating others how they want to be treated, then that's tawhid.
How is there a oneness to that? And what do you mean by oneness?
Right. So tawhid is God's self.
Yeah, what does that mean though? Like, what is oneness though in that situation?
Right. So oneness is not just one particular being. Oneness is an activity that binds reality toward the good of the whole.
So,
right? So whenever I act,
so Allah is binded.
Is tawhid. Yes, that is tawhid, right? But that doesn't make God dependent on creation.
Wait, Allah is binded together?
No. Sorry, not binding unto himself, man. Like the activity of tawhid upon creation is a fundamentally binding activity, right? It's mystically binding of all things. So like this comes to our virtues and to creation.
Where are we getting these virtues from?
From God.
How are we having a virtue of fairness and love if those virtues involve treating another person as yourself or treating someone like they're supposed to be treated?
I don't follow how that argument. What's the connection to that argument?
Because you're saying we get virtues from a thing that doesn't have those virtues in and of itself.
No, I'm not saying no. I'm saying that.
Does Allah have the virtue of treating other people like they're supposed to be treated, or other things like they're supposed to be treated?
Well, Allah's way of enacting that virtue onto Himself would be sufficient. What's your way of saying that that's insufficient somehow? Because I know what the argument is. The argument is that if Allah does these things to himself, well, you need other beings in order to be fair. So you would need a trinity, right? God is.
I didn't say you would need a trinity. I'm just saying you would need something else. Not even a different being. It just had to be another person or something else.
I think that presupposition is false, though.
How is it false? That's literally a definition of fairness.
Because I think we're trying to ascribe our fairness as human beings to each other.
So Allah's fairness ain't even fairness. It's just something different.
But your presupposition is that
no, is Allah's fairness anything like our fairness?
There must be some kind of oneness that makes that possible.
Hold on. Is Allah's fairness anything like our fairness?
Of course. I mean, so
okay. In what way?
Wait. So our fairness would have to participate.
No. In what way is Allah's fairness like ours?
But I'm trying to explain that, which is that our fairness would have to share in the likeness and image of the divine fairness, right?
In what way how is the divine fairness like our fairness?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'll have to ponder it more, but I don't think it defeats anything I've said.
You don't even know if it defeats because you don't know. Nobody knows.
But to be fair, you haven't really deeply pondered this. You're just presupposing that Allah's fairness is exactly the same as humans.
I didn't even say exactly. I'm saying it's analogical. And in the analogical sense, it has to be the same in some way. And you can't even tell me which way it is. Nobody can. Because they literally have divorced the concepts of virtues when you have one person that's a deity.
But then it's just an analogy, and there's not much we can do with that. We don't know to what degree that analogy maps out, right, to God. Or
you don't even know what fairness means for divine fairness.
I never said I don't know what it means.
Then what does it mean?
Clearly the kind of fairness that we have unto each other must share in a similarity to the divine.
Okay, what's the similarity then?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. Can we ponder that together, actually? Like, let's sit with the question and try to ponder that.
Oh my gosh. Hold on. I gotta restart my TikTok real quick.
Did it actually cut off like halfway through or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because apparently I didn't slide the little thing over. It didn't tell me to slide the thing over. But all right, we can continue. It's still.
No, that's fine. The view count's like 35. Are you like pretty new to streaming? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, I'm happy to contribute. Let me go ahead and is it back on?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, we're just trying to contemplate what it must mean for Allah to have a divine fairness that is, that is similar but also distinct from human fairness. Right?
Yeah. So how is it similar?
So let's see. So we know that human fairness is whenever each person is given their due properly, right? If I treat you justly and you treat me justly, like that's human fairness. So there's a type of wholeness in that, like we're giving a sense of wholeness to each other, that is due to each other because of our value as human beings. So we have this question of value, this question of wholeness and giving to each other. So these things must be,
Does your religion just not tell you how Allah is fair?
Oh, no, I'm not a Muslim. I tend to use natural reason with these sorts of things. Yeah. But
I mean, if you're thinking about going into Islam, you need to know how they explain this, because
no,
you can have a different conception and you pull up over there.
no.
Because I'll tell you right now, a lot of these Muslims on TikTok, they're going to tell you that Allah is just a bunch of pieces put together. It's composite.
One of the reasons why I'm happy to support your streaming is because the state of Islamic apologetics is a disaster right now. And I've even met other Islamic scholars who are like, oh yes, it's a disaster. These guys have no idea what they're talking about. So you keep fighting the good fight on that one. But no, I mean, I've read for example, I would recommend looking into Mullah Sadra. You know, he's someone who spent his entire life contemplating these very issues. I still need to read more of his corpus. What
does he say about fairness?
About fairness in particular, I don't know, but he does know that that human and worldly virtues are somehow unified within the Tawhid, and that the Tawhid
somehow
activity, right. Well, I haven't read what his work is, so that somehow is mine. It's not his. He's not being speculative. He has a degree of certainty, right? But I'm the one who's being speculative because I'm still learning these things, right? But yeah. So that's a good question for me to sit with, which is, if our fairness as human beings is different from Allah's, like what makes Allah?
Hold on, hey, I know, but dang well y'all didn't just come in here and then just not click the tap at all. Like y'all just not clicking the screen. Like, oh, we already put our taps in, and then like that's cool. Like we all know that we just got back here because Jordan's stream just ended for no reason. Y'all just sitting here like it's cool. Like, no, y'all gotta tap again. Like it's cooked now. Y'all have to tap, or else we're not gonna have anybody else up here. All right, what was you saying?
No, sure. I just think I have to more deeply, and maybe even just read more about the Muslim response to God's activity prior to creation. I think that's something that's not given enough attention by Islamic scholars.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you find out, come back and let me know.
Of course, man. No worries. Yeah, but
did you have any questions about Christianity specifically?
No. I was raised. I mean, I read all the church fathers and stuff, and that's why.
Dang, all of them. That's crazy.
Not all of them. That is crazy. Man.
Oh,
that's so insane. No.
Who is your favorite?
3 or 4. Ooh, probably either Augustine. Jerome is pretty good, but he's a little bit too late. He's almost on the edge of like being a church father. I'm also gonna say Origen.
Jerome's kind of early though.
Jerome is. I thought he was until like 4th century, dude.
That's still early. Like we got church fathers in the 7th century.
Oh, okay. When I think of church fathers, I think of like 2nd century. Like,
nah, that's like anti-Nicene fathers.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So we're getting really into details here. Okay, cool. Anyways, but they don't seem to respond to the question of distinction, because the same argument for
what do you mean distinction?
So like, do you know how there's a relationship in the Trinity because God the Father, the Son, and the Spirit are distinct from each other? That's how they have a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because man is distinct from God in the sense that they don't share a form, in the sense that there is no incarnation, there actually is a better relationship under the Islamic model, because distinction is what allows for relationships to happen.
No, right? That doesn't make sense. So even in the Christian model, there's always been a real distinction between God and creation.
But let me ask you this. If you're talking to me right now, are you talking to someone else or are you talking to yourself?
Someone else.
So that relationship in our conversation is because we are distinct beings with distinct forms. That's how we form relationships.
What is your definition of relation?
A relation is whether one person, right, is engaged with another person in some way or mode of activity, right? That's a relationship.
So that's how you're using it. I just need to know how you're using it. That's it.
Wait. I'm sorry, man. I hate to interrupt. I think the stream was acting up. I couldn't hear what you said. Can you repeat that?
No, I was saying, so that's how you're using it.
What would the classical definition? Maybe I'm missing.
No, I just don't know what because there's a difference between like a relation in and of itself and a relationship. Like I was just trying to figure out what you were saying.
Oh, actually, that's a good question. What's your That's something
I just want to know what you're talking about so I can engage with what you're saying specifically.
No, I think I would be using those terms interchangeably. But if you're using them not the same way, I'm actually interested to hear that.
Yeah, so, for relationship, there's no way on God's green earth that anybody can say that Islam has a better relationship between God and creation. Because in our model, God knew of our weakness, right? And he knows that we're so carnal minded and that we have these issues because of the fall, that he decided to cater to our own weaknesses, even though he didn't have to. So by taking on flesh, he caters to those things which we weak-minded individuals need. So just like how people who are less spiritual need to see more of a physical sign, then we look for something that's physical. So because us who are carnal minded, we don't pay attention to the spiritual aspects. He came in flesh so that we could see him as a human, see how we were supposed to act, the perfect way that we're supposed to act. So that's the relationship that he has with us. And not only that, by him doing that, we're able to be united with him because he's God and he repairs everything and he brings that relationship back to what it was supposed to be in the first place. Now, under the whole Christian paradigm, this makes sense because we're supposed to be images of God, right? And as an image of God, the Father loves the Son eternally through, the Father loves the Holy Spirit, etc., eternally, right? And we're supposed to be reflections of that communion, which is God. That's why we're supposed to love each other like we love ourselves. The Father loves the Son perfectly, like he loves himself, right? Why? This is spreading this love. This is where we are able to get this sharing of love. This is where we're able to get this fairness. This is why we're supposed to do it, because we're modeling ourselves after God. And ultimately, at the end, when God is all in all and we're all united, we get to experience the goodness of God through what you call either theosis or the beatific vision. So yes, the entirety of Christianity is about communion.
Yes, beautifully put. And by the way, there's coherence in the Christian tradition. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's incoherent. You use the terms beatific vision and theosis. Are you Orthodox or Catholic by any chance? Or
nah, that's why I use both.
Oh, okay. Like, wait, did you just use the? Okay, cool.
No, I'm inquiring into both, so that's why I use both. They use them interchangeably, but usually Catholics use beatific vision, and then Orthodox use theosis.
I was just talking with some Muslim scholars, and they were talking about how much they respect Catholics and Orthodox for their knowledge of history, the Church Fathers, Greek and Latin. So you're definitely on that path. Okay. I think what I'm trying to prove here is that if you look at the two traditions separately without trying to debunk one or the other or intermingle them, they're both coherent. So let me provide a parallel understanding.
Wait, I don't think Islam's coherent at all.
I didn't think that a year ago either, but just hear me out, and then if you think it's BS, then just that's fine. Okay, but so
are you looking into Sunni Islam or what?
Oh, Shiism is definitely better than Sunnism in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, I kind of expected that. That's what you're gonna say.
Okay, yeah, and also Shiism has a lot of commonalities with Catholicism. For example, apostolic succession is huge in Shiism, right? So I guess I'll speak from a Shia perspective. So in the Shia perspective, there's something called the Nur of the Prophets, right?
And what's that? Like the light of the prophets?
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. What do you know about that based on what you've heard?
No, I just know the Arabic.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So the Nur of the Prophets is, imagine if there was a way to have an incarnation theology without violating God's oneness or mode of being. That I think that's what the Islamic project is. There's not an incarnation in the sense that God himself takes on human flesh, but there is this uncreated light of divinity that's a sort of aspect of God's, a creative being that does become immanent within all the prophets, whether it's Joseph or Abraham or Moses or Jesus or Muhammad. That's sort of the Muslim perspective. So that mediation there that I think is that there's a hunger for in the Christian faith, that's not necessarily absent in the Islamic faith. It just takes on a new form, a new status, right, within the Nur of the Prophets, which I think is really interesting. So what are your thoughts on that when compared to the incarnation theology of, the Catholic and Orthodox faith?
I mean, I don't like it. I mean, historically, just Islam just doesn't even make sense. So it's kind of hard for me to depart it from Christianity because Christianity is actually like historical. So if you're making claims about quote unquote, Isa or whatever you want to call him, Jesus as the Messiah, we have to look at historically what that means to be a Messiah and where we're getting this from. And if you believe that Jesus is the Messiah, you have to look at historically what he did, and historically the people he was around, and historically what those people did. They started churches. and they called him God. Like those people literally, Mark, Matthew, those people literally started churches, and we have their teachings, and we have the teachings of the people that learned from them.
Which churches are you talking about with which gospels? Do you mean the churches that use the apocalypse of Adam, or the churches that use the gospel of Thomas?
No.
Which particular incarnation theology was the earliest alongside Paul's? Was it the one where there was docetism or modalism?
No.
Was it the one where is of the Sabellian controversy? Right.
No.
So how do we know what the now we can? I'm not saying that you can't parse it together. You can use your intellect to parse together church orthodoxy.
Yeah, you're just trying to figure out like historically, how do we know?
But historically, people within the Arian church were quoting Paul to support their Arianism.
Yeah.
Right.
But you know one thing that they weren't doing?
What?
They weren't following the teachings of what was passed down to them apostolically, which is one of
the apostolic succession. These were bishops within the church, and they were
but they didn't pass down the apostolic deposit, which is why we know that they were wrong. So we can trace back. So for instance, when we look back at like the line of succession, right? If you look at what they were saying, they'll literally tell you which father said this, John. Nobody. Because you guys have completely taught something different than what the fathers themselves had. Because one of the things, yeah.
So with the Arians in particular, I think they were these are a large group of bishops who were considered orthodox until several centuries into the church's history.
No.
They had read the church fathers and the patristics. They had a large community where quoting the historical use of the scriptures to support Arianism.
No. So the thing was, they were using their own interpretations. When we look at the church fathers, we're looking at an apostolic line of like, okay, this one taught this. We can trace this back to Irenaeus. We can trace this back to this. We can trace this back to that. They were not doing that. They were looking at the scriptures and saying, there was a time when Jesus was not. You will not see them quote any of the church fathers because they were not in line. Just because you have apostolic succession doesn't mean you're teaching what the apostles taught.
I'm very skeptical that Arius and the Arians, who were a very large group, who were considered orthodoxy for a long time up until
they were never considered orthodoxy.
So those bishops received the laying on of the hands. They were part of the apostolic.
Yeah, that's why Paul literally says, "Be careful who you lay on hands," because they have authority, and if they teach something wrong, like it has dire consequences.
But where did they receive that understanding of the wrong thing that they were teaching? It wasn't some new invention. These are people who were thinking this way for hundreds of years, and then whenever it becomes a controversy, they're considered heterodox by the church, right?
Yeah,
they went unnoticed for hundreds of years.
They didn't go unnoticed.
They did not go unnoticed for. So there are second century documents against the Arians or against the Ariist, heresy.
Yeah.
Which ones?
You can read against heresies.
Against heresies. Specifically debunks Arianism?
Yes. We have early church fathers that debunk these claims. That's why people like Cyril can go, and Athanasius can go back to the actual disciples of these things and say, look, this is that, and use scripture.
So which church father and which passage is directly addressing, say, I know it's probably not fair for me to ask you.
Well, Irenaeus is for sure going to say that. Ignatius is going to be another one. Ignatius learned directly from John. Now, to keep in mind, you're not going to see, this goes against Arianism. It's going to go against,
because he didn't exist yet.
Yeah, sure, exactly. So it's going to go against the beliefs of Arianism. So you'll see that it says that Jesus is equal to God because he is God. You're going to see all these different things.
But I think that the reason why heterodox,
like for instance, I can pull up one dude right now who was before Arius.
And to be fair, I'm also wondering, how like Origen is considered an important father, but he had certain heretical like statements and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if Arius might have quoted fathers who we now consider to be heterodox themselves, people like Tertullian and like Origen. I'm wondering if that also could have happened.
Right? Well, the thing about Tertullian is that he wasn't actually like he wasn't a father, never really a father. He's just like an early theologian.
Oh, okay, got him.
Yeah. So what I want to do? Let me find it real quick. Now, this dude, he was born in the early 200s, right?
Sure, yeah.
Um, his name is Gregory the Wonder Worker, or Gregory Thaumaturgus. All right.
Now he I have not heard of. So
Yeah.
thank you for enlightening me on that.
He's a goat.
Let me get a dose.
All
Why don't
right.
you, why don't
There
you
is
reveal it?
one God, the Father of the living Word, who is his subsistent wisdom and power and eternal image, perfect begetter of the perfect begotten, Father of the only begotten Son. There is one Lord, only one of only, well, only of the only, God of God, God of God, image and likeness of deity, efficient word, wisdom comprehensive of the constitution of all things, and power formative of the whole creation, true Son of true Father, invisible of invisible, and incorruptible of incorruptible, and immortal of immortal, and eternal of eternal. And there is one Holy Spirit, having his assistance from God, and being made manifest by the Son, to wit to men, image of the Son, perfect image of the perfect, life, the cause of the living, holy fount, sanctity, the supplier, leaders, sanctification, in whom is manifested God the Father, who is above all and in all, and in God the Son, who is through all. There is perfect Trinity in glory and eternity and sovereignty, neither divided nor estranged. Therefore, wherefore there is nothing either created or in servitude in the Trinity, nor anything superinduced, as if at some former period it was non-existent, etc., etc. And thus, neither was the Son ever wanting to the Father, nor the Spirit to the Son, but without variation, without change, the Trinity abides ever. So this dude is from the early 200s, before Arius.
Oh, for sure. Yes, for sure. Now, the Council of Nicaea. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Council of Nicaea is the first church council to accept the orthodoxy of the Trinity as we have it today. Correct?
Not accepted, but like to like, we don't really say like they make this the doctrine. They say that they just confirm the doctrine.
Sure, sure, of course. But like the first one to be initiated and confirm that doctrine of the Trinity, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that this comes down to, did Arius have other people in the previous tradition he was quoting that was simply rejected at the First Council of Nicaea, and these thinkers instead were accepted at that council? Is probably the question to ask. Because these heresies don't come out of nowhere. If it was just an error that was like as easy as just reading a church father to know that you were wrong, you wouldn't have hundreds, or I guess dozens of bishops at the very least behind your support,
If you,
all committing the same heresy, right?
yeah. So in the Bible, it literally says that unstable and untrained men twist to their own destruction the scriptures. So if they can do that, they can twist the fathers as well.
But was Arius so I'm not so you're like, of course you're allowed to think he was impious and wrong, but like, do you think Arius was poorly trained? Do you have any evidence that he was worse off trained than the other bishops, or like that he was uniquely incompetent, that he just created heresy out of nowhere because he was just that poorly read on the entire church history for 250 years?
We not saying, look, Arius was hella philosophical. First of all, I'm not saying he was dumb, right?
Sure.
So there are people who are dumb and then they misinterpret these things. From our perspective, we would say that this is something of private interpretation that Satan himself drew up through this individual, right? So we wouldn't say he's dumb, because if Arius came on TikTok right now and debated some of these people, he would wax them.
I'm sure that we would both lose if
I wouldn't lose, me personally, but I wouldn't lose. I for sure wouldn't lose.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
there are people that would. The only reason I wouldn't lose is because I've already read, like, Athanasius and Cyril and the Church Fathers. So I already know about all these art, etc. Right? I'm not saying I was just born out the womb like this. I'm not, but I'm just saying he was smart, which is why a lot of his arguments work on people who don't know any better, right? So exactly where he got it, you can see passages and then think like, okay, this is that. But we would say that's from private interpretation and not actually from looking at what the apostles taught and what the people who were rightly installed taught.
To be fair, I also imagine it's a little bit tough to get the sources because these works tend to be destroyed within the early church and the medieval church as well. Not saying that I'm not making any judgments on that. I'm just saying that that's like a fact of history, right? So it might also be difficult.
Because from our perspective, you have to understand that the Holy Spirit is guiding these councils, and we don't want to like have anything be out there that's going to hurt people's salvation. It's not a game. It's not like, oh yeah, for perpetuity, let's just always, keep the writings of these heretics. We don't want people to fall into the same things because they are untrained and unstable or whatever it may be. Maybe they're not in the right spiritual mindset. Who knows, right? Because this is serious. That's why we're supposed to keep the tradition all the way through. That's why Catholics and Orthodox are going to argue that you maintain the same exact theology straight from Christ. Because it's like it's an apostolic deposit that you're supposed to hold on. The laying on of hands, that was supposed to be the same, basically, but to a greater degree now than before. That's what you would call like a shmicha, which would be, or shmicha, however you want to pronounce it. But that's when the prophets would lay hands, or the priests would lay hands on another priest and give them the authority. There was bad priests. They did bad things. That doesn't, there's people who can be in error, but because they're in a high position and they do these things and they go after their own devices, they go after their own ways, that makes it worse on their head. But that's why it's important, because we believe through the councils that God is speaking, just like in Acts chapter 15, where you have we call it the Jerusalem Council, or Acts chapter 15 Council, where the correct doctrine will be expounded. Like we will see that. And we vote, etc. Like there's different ways as to which we look into that.
This is fascinating because first of all, thank you. Yeah, no, that's spot on. That's and I'll have to look into how much we know about Arius' supporters and whether or not they're supporting him based on
historically. I would just look at what Ignatius taught.
No, I know what Ignatius taught. So that's not the issue. There's so much.
Ignatius was a disciple of John. And he said, if you don't have a bishop, you are not connected to the Messiah.
For sure.
Who are the bishops in Islam? They don't even have a priesthood.
This is a beautiful question. This is such a beautiful question. I love this question so much. The succession in Islam is because of the thing I was telling you about, right? The sort of
but who did they get it from?
Right, there's a succession going. So
who did they get it from, though?
From Muhammad.
That can't be where you get it from.
Why not?
Because you remember how we were talking about a shmicha? How you have the laying on of hands?
Yes.
We have the Messiah. It's supposed to come from the Messiah.
Oh, okay. So the laying on the hands, this is very important. So you can have parallel traditions that reflect each other. Whether or not you want to believe in those traditions is one thing. So for example, you're right that you're directly connecting that laying on of the hands, that use of the laying on of the hands to the Jewish culture that Jesus was participating in. That's true, right? What I'm talking about is whenever there's a succession from the Ahlul Bayt, right, which is the
I get that, but you could have a succession. Okay, I'm not, and don't take this wrong.
Well, they're parallel traditions. Right?
You could, all right. So I was gonna say like you could have a succession of dogs, like, but that's not what I mean. But I'm gonna use presidents, right? You could have a succession of presidents. Cool. We have a succession of presidents all the way to George Washington. That does not mean that was the succession that's supposed to be from the Messiah. That was ordained by God.
Sure, but Islam doesn't claim to be a succession from the Messiah. There's no.
That's the issue. That's the issue. Historically,
but that's not an issue for Islam.
It is
because they don't make that claim. So you're
if they no if they
like if I said how can Jesus be the Son of God if he isn't here in the room in his
no.
He walked the earth right now, and you're like
you guys are admitting that you want to follow the Jewish Messiah, correct? Jesus is the Messiah, right?
Why is that an admission? Sure, yes. Yeah.
All right. If he's the Jewish Messiah, you are supposed to follow after what the Messiah is supposed to do. The Messiah is supposed to introduce a priesthood, and you're supposed to be in line with his teachings. And his teachings were to follow his apostles and to have this laying on of hands. You guys, if you guys don't admit to doing that, from tracing it all the way back to Christ, there's no way that you guys can be a part of that line at all.
No, that's interesting. That's a good point. So I think there's two things that I'm thinking of, and you can let me know what your thoughts are, right? So one, I thought more recently about this, and there are at least a handful of Islamic jurists and scholars I've seen maybe take this approach. But the idea that when Christ instituted, the early church, let's just use that framework, right? That this is a form of tasawwuf, in the sense that it's like it's supposed to be a path that reintegrates the law toward acting out virtue, right, through some kind of ritual or tradition, right? So in Sufism, you have the idea of tasawwuf, where you have miniature traditions that are created by a leader with their own successions. So there is an Islamic belief that Christ was instituting a tasawwuf with his own particular succession as the Messiah.
Where are they getting that background from?
I'm not sure how to answer that question. What do you mean by getting that background from?
So we have an idea of what somebody is supposed to be doing or what somebody's supposed to be thinking. We need proof around that.
For sure.
Because we as Christians, we look at the entirety of the Old Testament, we see all of this stuff, and we see how it literally says there's still supposed to be priests, but there's going to be Gentile priests in the future.
So
that are going to be traced back from the Messiah. So you guys don't even have a priesthood, and it's not traced to the Messiah.
If you read the Septuagint in Greek, especially in particular parts that have to do with messianic prophecies, it is almost uncanny to the degree to which those prophecies are fulfilled. I understand. If you look at any comparative translation, whether it's from the rabbinical literature or the Qumran scrolls, those arguments tend to fall apart.
They do not. I can show you every single one.
They do.
I wish you would see me when
they actually go through those. I actually have a great paper about Isaiah 42, Isaiah 53.
We can talk about Isaiah 53 right now if you want.
Where all of the earliest texts predating the Septuagint text actually show that God is the one who is punishing the Messiah, which is antithetical to the Christian message, where God is the one who's supposed to save the Messiah from unfair punishment. Right? Would you like to look at that paper?
Wait, what do you think that?
So if you read the earliest Qumran texts of Isaiah 53, the message is different. The wording implies that God is the one who is punishing the suffering servant. Whereas if you read the Greek texts, right, that come later, they say that that the suffering servant is suffering unjustly and that God will save him, right? These are two completely different theological messages.
What do you mean God will save him?
As in God will redeem the suffering servant basically by raising him from the dead, right?
How are those in conflict?
Did God punish Jesus?
So that's where you're getting the idea of punishment. It's not a punishment.
But that's what the earliest Qumran text says.
It doesn't.
This punishment of the suffering servant.
It's not a punishment. Nowhere does it say punishment.
Do you remember what the text says?
We have the same exact. It's literally going to follow after the Masoretic tradition that we have with Isaiah 53.
No, the Masoretic is different. The Masoretic means something different from either of those two. I'm talking about the Qumran, right?
On Isaiah 53, like from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
QISSAA, whatever.
Yeah, it's going to just be the Dead Sea Scrolls. We don't have any difference in those.
Have you not read the Isaiah 53 scroll from the Dead Sea?
I have.
It's starkly different from the.
And also, we don't really. I mean, we can get into textual.
Sure, yeah, but that's going to be a pain.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, if you want, I can actually just bring up the source later and just bring it back so that I'm not capping. But
which part are you talking about specifically?
No, that's the thing. I'm going to have to find my source.
I have it up. I'm just asking which part.
Oh, can you share your screen? Oh, so you have the actual text. Yeah, but there was this paper I had that helped into.
Because the issue you're gonna have is there's like multiple scrolls, so.
That I give the Catholics credit for is that if something changed and was earlier in the Qumran scrolls, they'll just replace it with the newest USCCB.
Because nothing that I've seen entails anything different than what we believe, even in these.
Do you just want me to come back with the source I'm talking about?
You can, but I'm about to like go, so I don't know when that's gonna be because I
Oh,
already
well,
I already have the different
come back
scrolls pulled
tonight.
up.
I do not mean come back tonight. I mean like come back at how often do you stream?
Lord knows.
Fair enough. I'll subscribe. There we go.